on Sunday. Let's go to Nick Robertson, who's standing by in Riyadh. Nick, what do we expect from that speech?
Well, we can expect something that's going to be respectful. That's what General McMaster, National Security Advisor, has briefed us on, that this speech will be something that tries to sort of put forward a very nuanced message, recognizing that President Trump had very negative things to say about Muslims during his campaign. While the Saudis have put that to one side, his speech here, the holiest place, the holiest country, if you will, in Islam, needs to be very nuanced when he delivers a message that says, you as all the leaders in these Arab, Muslim and regional countries here need to put forth a more peaceful and more tolerant image of Islam. And certainly the leaders here already believe that they are, so the message will need to be nuanced in that regard. President Trump's visit here in Saudi Arabia will, if it goes to plan, break a record in as much as his visit to Saudi Arabia will be the longest of any president. President Bush in 2008 was here. President Trump will exceed the length of his visit by a couple of hours. I was here for that, and also when President Obama came on his last visit here a year ago, and the contrast for the rollout and reception that we're seeing being built up at the airport here today compared to last year when President Obama came. I remember the reporting when President Obama arrived was something of a scandal that the Saudis hadn't sent senior enough representatives to the airport to meet and greet with him. So the fact that King Salman is out at the airport now, is an older gentleman in his 80s now. He may not be out in the sweltering heat here on the tarmac as President Trump comes down the steps. He may be in a VIP reception area waiting for President Trump to arrive to greet him there. But absolutely, this is a very, very big warm welcome. We've talked about that over the past day, the flags flying at the side of the road, US-Saudi flags, and the pictures of Prince King Salman next to President Trump at the side of the road, all of that. But this is the embodiment of it when the King of Saudi Arabia at his age goes out to the airport to greet someone. That's big. For President Trump, we heard there, as we were saying, that he hasn't got a lot of sleep on the plane. Today is a relatively light day. He'll meet with the King on a couple of occasions, a brief visit to a museum. He'll meet, we understand, with other members of the government, the Deputy Crown Prince, the King's son, amongst others. So a relatively light schedule today. The speech, of course, that's tomorrow. And as you say, that is the big part of his visit. A lot of pressure, if you will, on delivering a nuanced message there.
And I think, Nick and Jeremy, I think our American and our international viewers are probably looking at this very differently, because for our American viewers, of course, there's been this barrage of information coming out of the White House, revelations regarding, in many instances, the Russia investigation. And American viewers will undoubtedly be looking at this and wondering, how does that domestic context play into this foreign trip? Jeremy, in your sense, does that weaken President Trump in any way? Does it hamper his ability to make deals or to represent the United States when he's meeting foreign leaders?
Well, certainly some foreign leaders may be wondering, what the president truly can accomplish with his political capital weakened back home in Washington. I don't expect that to really affect his one-on-one interactions with leaders. But one thing to keep in mind is that this is on President Trump's mind as well. And, he is going to be focused on this idea of, all the scandals and the controversies that he is facing back home, and whether or not he is going to be able to overcome them, what his next move is going to be to really fight back against some of these allegations. So
Jeremy,
he is
we're
certainly
watching
going to be focused on that in many of his discussions.
And we're watching live pictures, sorry to interrupt, of President Donald Trump, who's making his way down the staircase. Of course, next to him, Melania Trump. And they will soon be touching the soil of Saudi Arabia. And I do believe that we are seeing, if I'm not mistaken, it's yet to be confirmed, but I do believe that we're seeing the Saudi king about to greet Donald Trump in person.
Very happy to see
Nick Robertson was just telling us, an older gentleman there, and Nick was speculating perhaps he wouldn't come out in the sweltering heat. Well, there it is, the symbolism. He did. And he greeted Donald Trump right at the bottom of the steps of Air Force One. The King of Saudi Arabia, the president, the new president of the United States, a handshake, the first few words. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And of course, to comment this with us are Nick Robertson and Jeremy Diamond, both of them covering the trip, first overseas trip of the U.S. president abroad. All right, Nick, it's interesting to watch these pictures. Tell me again, you were telling me about when Barack Obama was greeted here, and it was a different picture from what we're seeing now.
It was. There was none of the fanfare. There was an arrival. There was a roster of dignitaries, but nothing to the level of the king. And to just to, if you will, hammer home that point of how much the Saudis are going out on a limb here with all that baggage, that political baggage that President Trump brings with him, that they are associating themselves so closely with him. We think of Theresa May going to visit President Trump at the White House. We think of Angela Merkel, how badly that has played for them subsequently in their audiences back home. The king is aware of that, but he is putting all that on the line here, and everything, all the trouble that Trump leaves behind him to a degree, to associate himself with him so closely. They're at the foot of the steps. That is as big a welcome as it gets here. That shows you how important this is to the Saudis. Melania, we noticed they're wearing much more deferential clothes than we saw her boarding the aircraft, boarding Marine One and Air Force One before she left the United States. The king there, perhaps you could see on your screen better than I could see here, Cyril.
Yeah, we can.
But did he extend his hand? Did he
Absolutely,
shake
absolutely.
hand?
They shook hands. It appeared to be a warm welcome, Nick.
A warm welcome, but the symbolism of the king of a very, very conservative country, the home of Islam, where women here wear scarves over their heads. Many women cover their faces as well. That the king reaches out and shakes the hand of the First Lady, whose head is not covered. That's normal here. No female dignitaries visiting this country, they don't cover their heads the same way that local women have to when they're out in public here. But this is a very big statement from the king, not just being there. He's very much putting himself at the side of the United States. He's investing a lot of his own political and regional capital in President Trump and the success of what President Trump can do for the region. And if you will, if there are problems ahead, serious problems for President Trump, this will reflect on the king. So this is a very bold position that he's taking.
So, Nick, two things. First of all, don't let me mislead you. I misunderstood your question earlier. I can't guarantee that the King of Saudi Arabia shook Melania Trump's hand. I didn't see that. We're looking at the pictures. I'm told that he did. And secondly, tell me about Saudi Arabia and Barack Obama, because you told us about how the welcome was different, the meeting was different, but of course there's been a huge sigh of relief in several countries around the region, and notably here in Saudi Arabia, that they are seeing the back of Barack Obama. They are extremely happy about this new president.
They feel that he pulled the United States out of the region, that he ceded the territory, number one, to Iran, number two, to Russia. There's a sense that, the way that he pulled U.S. forces out of Iraq, it was precipitous. It was too soon. That allowed Iran to develop a stronger hand in Iraq. That's on Saudi Arabia's northern border. A huge concern. Main regional rival gets more power. That's a worry. The other worry was that they felt that President Obama didn't have their back. Saudi is a huge ally of the United States. So was Egypt. So was President Ben Ali in Tunisia. So when the Arab Spring began in early 2001, the Saudis told Ben Ali to stay on in power. They wanted the United States to support him. The same for Hosni Mubarak in Egypt. That didn't happen. So the Saudis had to do a massive, huge recalibration. 21% of Saudi GDP this year will be spent on defense. One of the principal reasons for that is because they lost faith in the United States because of President Obama. They massively upped their spending on defense and security. They're now the world's third largest defense and security spender. They massively upsized the scale of their defense forces, their interior forces here in this country, because they figured that the United States wouldn't stand behind them in a time of crisis and they would need to fight for themselves. So when President Trump, here is somebody that they hope will reset all of that, will look after their regional interests, and to wit, you know, part of, if you will, the mechanism to bring that point home to President Trump, that the Saudi king, not just sitting on a lot of oil, not just in Islam's holiest country, but can bring in here Muslim and Arab and regional leaders on a huge scale. 3 summits the three summits is how the Saudis are casting this, that they can pull in so much regional muscle behind them, is a message to President Trump that they're the power brokers, deal with Saudi, this royal family is effective, and you've got their backing and support as long as we can work together. That's going to be the key message.
And Cyril, if I can just jump in here with
Jeremy,
two quick thoughts.
Jeremy, just a second.
Yes.
We're actually looking at the pictures of Donald Trump and King Salman exchanging first few words, it seems, as they've now sat down at the terminal of the airport known as the Royal Hall, and they are currently going to be attending a welcome tea ceremony. So we'll see what that looks like. The President of the United States laughing right now, so apparently some levity in the exchanges, as you would expect. It's all protocol at the moment. Jeremy?
Yeah, just to underscore the points that Nick is making here, as far as the foreign policy approach of the Trump administration, I can't emphasize enough the fact that in the last couple of weeks in conversations with Trump administration officials and on a call with Saudi officials, both have really focused on the fact that they are on the same page here, particularly when it comes to Iran. As Nick is talking about, the Obama administration really sought some a certain advancement of relations with Iran, not only with the nuclear deal, but also looking longer term into the future. They were really hoping to kind of recalibrate the U.S.'s position in the Middle East, to have a foreign policy that was less Saudi-centric and really looking more at broader engagement with the Muslim world, engagement that could include Iran as well. And so Saudi officials have been really relieved to see President Trump come into office here and really emphasize the nature of the threat that Iran poses to the United States and Saudi Arabia, which is something that both sides truly believe, and also making clear that, you know, he is going to re-up the U.S.'s defense commitment. There had been some weapons held back in the Obama administration to Saudi officials due to human rights concerns. Those concerns have now evaporated under this administration. But the second thing to really talk about here, as I'm watching these pictures of President Trump coming here to Saudi Arabia, you know, I covered his campaign, and the rhetoric that he used during that campaign, particularly about Muslims in the United States and Muslim refugees, to see him now in Saudi Arabia as his first foreign trip is nothing short of striking. You know, the president, you will, excuse me, the president, you will recall, talked about the fact that Islam hates us. That is something that the president said in March of 2016. And a few months before that, he called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. And I was struck, you know, yesterday working on a story previewing this speech that the president will give tomorrow to potentially reset his relationship with Muslims. I remembered this silent protester who came to a Trump rally a month after he called for that ban on Muslims, Rose Hamid. This woman wearing a hijab stood silently a few rows behind the president in the grandstands of this rally. And just the fact that she was standing there silently elicited massive jeers from the crowd around her. And Trump campaign officials, assisted by police officers, removed that woman and kicked her out. And the president talked about the hatred against us, not his hatred, not the hatred of his supporters, but the hatred that America faces. Presumably, it would seem from the context of that conversation that he was talking about Muslims, of course. Now we see a president who is trying to get a reset with Muslims as he comes to this country, meeting with the Saudi king, who of course is the custodian of the 2 holiest sites in Islam, and all of that happening, of course, as the president and his administration continue to defend the travel ban against 7 Muslim-majority countries back in the United States federal court. So, of course, all of that is still happening. So there's a lot of irony, of course, happening here as we see the president meeting with the Saudi king, but certainly a lot of tiptoeing that needs to happen here, and really a lot of tightrope walking as the president tries to forge stronger bonds with the Saudi king and Muslim partners in the region.
Yeah, and we're just seeing now the President of the United States and the King of Saudi Arabia leaving the Royal Hall at the airport in Riyadh. They've just been sitting down, enjoying their first, judging by the facial expressions, their first few words together, first verbal exchanges one-to-one. Sitting, it should be noted, in front of the portraits of previous Saudi kings. So Donald Trump very much in the House of Saud here. And this is just the beginning of his 48 hours that he's going to spend in Saudi Arabia, with a major speech, as our correspondents were telling us, expected yesterday, I beg your pardon, tomorrow. Speech on Sunday about Islam. We believe Mr. Trump is expected to advocate a more peaceful vision of Islam. Those are the first couple of words that we've had about what we might expect from the speech. You're seeing Donald Trump there about to board one of the vehicles, the U.S. vehicles there for him. And he's going to be spending the day meeting further with King Salman, meeting also with the Crown Prince, that's important, and meeting with the Deputy Crown Prince. Let me turn to James Davis, in fact, about those meetings. James Davis, who's following this with us, he's currently in Berlin. He's a dean at the University of St. Gallen. What does that tell us, the fact that Donald Trump is meeting the Crown Prince, the Deputy Crown Prince, when you know how complicated the succession talks can be in Saudi Arabia? Does that mean, to some extent, Mr. Trump has to navigate that relationship to not sort of avoid any faux pas in the succession talks there?
Yeah, I mean, Saudi royal politics are very opaque. The family relationships are complicated, and I think the president is wise to cover his bets, to develop as many good relationships as he can. We don't know who will in the end succeed this king. We have Mohammed bin Nayef, the crown prince, but also who is not a son of the king, but we also have the king's son as the deputy crown prince. I think he'll be trying to develop as many personal relationships as he can with this new generation. And this new generation of leaders is important because they are trying to move Saudi Arabia, a very conservative monarchy, many would say sort of stuck in the past. They're trying to move this conservative monarchy into the future. They're trying to slowly expand the rights of women, slowly open the society up to influences from abroad, but in a way that's consistent with the continued rule of the royal family. And it's a difficult act to accomplish at home, and the president is going to have to try and navigate those waters as best he can.
James, a quick question to you about what may be or may not be a personal relationship between the King of Saudi Arabia and Donald Trump. Do you think there's just a political connection there and the king is just thinking we're happy to see the back of Barack Obama? Or do you think, as has been suggested by some analysts, that there actually might be a personal connection? Because viewed by the King of Saudi Arabia, Donald Trump is a man of money. He is a man who uses his family in politics. The House of Trump, the House of Saud, do you think there's a personal connection there that may help the two countries' bilateral politics?
Well, I don't know if they've developed a personal relationship yet, but it's certainly the approach to politics that resonates with the Saudis. I think the Saudis and Arabs in general really do value personal relationships. And to the extent that the president can succeed in developing a bond of trust between the king and the American president, I think he will come out of this and see this meeting as a success. The Saudis, of course, are comfortable with, as you suggested, with wealthy man who brings his family with him into the White House, who uses his children to promote his interests and his agenda. That's the way politics works in Saudi Arabia. And so this does not seem particularly odd to them. And so I think I would expect not only the president, but also the children of the president to be trying very hard to develop their own personal relationships with important members of the royal family and the royal household.
Right, and Jared Kushner, who is not just the president's son-in-law, but also one of his top advisors, was apparently the person who was running point on organizing this trip, and he'd been in touch with the Saudi Crown Prince. James Davis, thank you very much. We're going to take a very short break, some 20, 25, 30 minutes after the President of the United States has arrived in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The handshake, there it is, the welcome. Donald Trump and Melania Trump. Handshake for both of them by the Saudi King Salman. We take a short break. We're back after this.